I'm Beth Pariseau, Senior News Writer at Informa Tech Target, and this is IT Ops Query Season 3 Observability in the Age of AI. If you've recently ordered coffee at Starbucks and paid with a credit card, you might have seen Secured by Freedom Pay on the point of sale digital display or your phone. Mark Tomlinson is Senior Director of Performance and Observability for the digital payments provider, which consolidated its observability tooling on Dynatrace over the last 2 years. Tomlinson, who previously worked for PayPal, also served as Chief Performacologist, founder and host of the Perf Bytes podcast from 2012 to 2023. Thanks for being with us, Mark.
Hi, Beth. It's great to be with you as well.
So, first, I have to ask, what is a performacologist? I've never heard that term before. Did you coin it?
Well, yes, you can imagine it's quite a privilege after working in an industry for 30 years that you don't know what title you should have at a job. And certain companies really value titles. I think it's really important if you're getting started in your career that you define what your capabilities are. So as an old technologist dude, I got to just put whatever title I wanted in LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
as a performacologist because I went independent in 2012 and I did a whole bunch of independent consulting and I still do a bunch of side hustle things. And so, yeah, performacologist is sort of like, well, it's sort of like a proctologist, but for your computer systems. Um, making sure everything's healthy and clean and working optimally. That's kind of the PC version of,
Mm,
of the definition.
I see. Okay. So, Freedom Pay is no stranger to AI as a user of Dynatrace Davis, but what I'm talking to guests about on this season of my podcast is how generative AI changes the observability picture. So, what's your view on that?
I think the thing that's interesting from a Davis perspective is one, it puts a guy like me out of a job,
Mm.
which is refreshing
Hmm.
in a way. I'd like to retire someday and maybe go have a sandwich. That would be nice.
Uh huh.
But because if you think of what makes me valuable to a company like Freedom Pay,
Mm-hmm.
or as a consultant, as I was out selling my services as a performance or systems guru guy, it was the amassed experience of inputs to my organic AI
Mm-hmm.
and the working with a company. I've been hanging around with the Dynatrace guys for 15 years,
Mm.
quite a long time. And Andy and I and some of the Barent go way back.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just this evolving understanding of all of the different anti-patterns and all the different things that can go into solving a problem or causing a problem within a system. And I used to have this talk I gave called a bucket full of bottlenecks, which was this way I described my work as a sort of workaday Microsoft performance testing person, a performance test consulting,
Mm-hmm.
working with hundreds of customers a year, and they would bring their systems in and at least 75-80% of the bottlenecks were known issues, and here we were just giving them the same solution over and over again.
Mm.
But you walked around, and what made me valuable was that I had this experience of bottlenecks. And
Mm-hmm.
Dynatrace Davis AI generally, all types of AI start to automate that entire knowledge application or applying that knowledge to some value.
Mm.
So it's incredibly important, even before we called it observability. If it was monitoring and root cause analysis and some of the APM buzzwords that we had,
Mm-hmm.
were if I could start automating those things, the identification and remediation, and of course, notification that all of this is happening is really, really important. So the majority of the work per performance for a guy like me is still root cause analysis. So it's very
Mm.
causal, it's correlative. The one thing that's exciting me the most recently from the Davis perspective is the natural language support, what's happening in the explain world. Explain what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Over many years in Dynatrace, in the UI for problems, they had sort of a problem evolution graph that would sort of show a visual path or history replay of what broke first, what sent the alert, how
Mm-hmm.
did we solve it, and then show the resolution. So it was this evolution of a problem. And again, it was very historical rendering of the data as it sat in history. It wasn't being sort of fed into, hey, Davis, would you explain to me what's going on? Because Mark went off to have a sandwich or he retired. And so we don't have that really smart performance person on our team. It's a really pretty amazing how you can translate all of that same data from a simple visual into actually something that I wouldn't say a non-performance person, but a non-expert person
Mm.
could actually leverage those explanations directly into a customer case, into an explanation, some kind of a post-mortem, if you will. Yeah.
Right.
So the explain part is really interesting to me.
Are there any limitations of generative AI that don't apply to the other sorts like causal and predictive AI?
I mean, I think there's some interesting things from like a what if scenario. So if I think
Mm,
about generative AI being able to do something with a what if scenario. Now, traditional forecasting, like a Holtz winter forecast or any type of regression analysis that would give you forecasting or predictive analytics,
mm,
is interesting because it's based on known data,
mm.
not potentially fictitiously rendered according to the model type of data,
Ah,
a what if scenario.
yep.
So it really changes the definition of what does it mean to say what if, like disaster recovery. What if this machine got turned off? What if this happened in a model? And it takes me back to some of the early performance modeling tools. I remember Hyperformix was a great company. I think CA bought Hyperformix. Is a
Mm,
great company. There was another one called, I think, TeamQuest, and they were some real quantitative analytics guys.
yeah.
But again, predictive analytics, and it was different than a generative AI that could generate what if a system, a component in the model that never existed before suddenly existed to do something. So
Mm,
you could actually introduce a future fictitious state in the model
right.
and then start running your what if scenarios against a truly imaginative idea. And that could be based on, I think would be cool if it was based on known patterns and practices that I hadn't adopted yet. Oh, you could put this type of message queuing in here and put this type of service bus situation over here. And here's what that might look like. So to an architect, that's tremendous, right? I think that's
Hmm.
really, really huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Another guest here that I talked to was talking about the possibilities with GraphRag
Yeah.
and visualizing those what if scenarios.
Yeah.
So no sooner do we have generative AI, then of course the next hotness is agentic AI. Is that something you plan to use with observability tools or in production apps? How would that change the equation, do you think?
I think it changes. I mean, auto remediation is not a new idea. We were talking about sort of manual ideas for auto remediation, but when I think about it in two ways without an AI, without a way we've done auto remediation was that we still manually analyzed what could be automated or auto remediated, and then we automated the remediation deterministically.
Mhm.
And we also did this at a very low level. Consider, for an instant, garbage collection. So, as we moved into .NET and Java with multi generational garbage collection, we removed a whole set of problems. It was more like it wasn't really automation remediation. It was more like problem prevention
Mhm.
or automatic prevention. Like the problem doesn't happen in the first place
Mhm.
because we've gone so low level. And the other thing about it is sort of this that self healing capability of a system is usually based on very pre-approved and proven
Mhm.
techniques for remediating something. And I think what's different when I think about agentic AI is just that you've got a dynamically learning, it's almost like an organism that learns from things that you didn't even ask it to remediate. It might say, you might not see that as a problem, but I'm seeing all of this as a problem. What if I introduce and do an A B test automatically on, well, what if we bypass a component this way and sent it in this direction? And now we start talking about automatically releasing features for testing, automatically trying something in either an A B kind of test. So auto remediation becomes also auto identification of problems that you didn't even think you had. And again, if an AI, and this is a dangerous part, Beth, for me, is I would love to connect like all of the APM tools to the same hive mind
Mhm.
of bottlenecks because sure enough, my own idea as an ex Microsoft is, yeah, this is the same bug and the same missing patch and the same thing. And we've got 14,000 customers are all going to hit this same bug. An old patching mechanism doesn't do it. Well, what if all these AIs are running around
Mhm.
and they're all getting this rich feature data from their observability tools and they're all coming up, well, they're not talking to each other and saying, did you come up with that same conclusion? Yeah, I came up with that same conclusion. And they all come up with the same type of solution. And that's scary on one level,
Yeah.
but it's also every system on the planet would benefit
Hmm.
from learning from one another. Maybe it's an objective way. Maybe it's that for quality assurance purposes, we're recording your AI events, and sharing them. Who knows?
Right. As somebody who has a little ways to go before I retire, Does that mean we're all out of a job or what?
Still don't subscribe to
Okay.
that. I think much like automated testing, if I remember the first automated testing teams, I was on a team of 35 people, I think, doing a really large regression. And I was the young guy and I was like, look at these cool new automated tools. And everyone was freaking out
Mm,
with full respect, right? I think there's something to be said. Is this going to replace me as a human? Is it going to replace me as a tester? And here I am 30 years later, and their testing has adapted and changed. And I see a lot of things happen in terms of the mental capabilities and the speed with which and the flexibility with which the human mind can figure out if something is valuable,
mm,
if something is valued in a diverse way
mm.
versus being valued in very binary or very finite objective ways. I think it doesn't put us out of a job for well, particularly for you, Beth, as an expert questioner and uh, and researcher. But for me, it frees me up to the hardest part of performance engineering, hardest part of observability, which is how do I help a human system
Mm.
prosper? A business built on human values, or what do my customers really like? What do they really want to do things faster or do things better? That's really my job. It wasn't just making this SQL query go fast. It was why should I make this SQL query go fast? Who benefits?
Mm.
And I think it frees us up anytime we can make the machines take care of themselves. It frees us up to do the important and the harder work for sure.
So, as a practitioner, are you putting generative AI and copilots to use already? Has that something you're testing out? Where is that in terms of your environment?
Copilot wise, Freedom Pay generally, in terms of our code base, we're not big in terms of AI and code. We have some regulations and compliance
Hmm.
around that just for the time being.
Hmm.
I think using Copilot in Dynatrace, we do have enabled because it's metadata. It doesn't have access to the deep core data.
Right.
So we do use it for people. And primarily, I see people using it as learning
Mm.
capabilities. Copilot help me, I don't know how to write a particular DQL. How do I build something? So I see it definitely as the helper
Yeah.
and getting over a learning curve,
Hmm.
which is one thing, but not just a learning curve for the the observability tool, right?
Hmm.
A learning curve on how our systems are representing themselves in the observability tool. So how do I understand how the services talk to each other? I'm new and I can use Copilot. Tell me what are the dependencies. So you get these show me the response time of something and how it impacts something is really helpful to people who are like, I could get lost in the weeds of all this configuration and all this data. Really important, I think, to us. I think moving forward at Freedom Pay, knowing my compliance teams, we're going to be really, really strict about how we allow it to touch our code base
Right.
and touch any data, which I fully respect.
Hmm.
The industry probably is leaning that way around finances and other sectors, right? But for us, there's a lot of growth in, again, that metadata space, reporting, understanding the business,
Hmm.
understanding globally what a merchant's company is doing, what that data means. So I could see it definitely, machine learning generally, in terms of rich feature data, and the observability tools give us this incredible, robust, rich feature data to build models off of. And I can see it really working from a business analytics perspective for sure, and just leveraging that on behalf of our customers. I think I can see that happening before we ever go deep into the core of what we do.
Yeah. Are these developers that are using it as a learning tool so far? Are they business stakeholders? Both?
It's actually a mix of both.
Oh, okay.
Developers, a lot of testers. I find maybe that's my bias at Freedom Pay, just because I'm a tester and so I have great relationships. But SRE, DevOps, I have a handful of business analysts, we kind of have a commercialization team that does like new product introduction, and
Mm.
they're very interested in what we're doing with customers and leveraging business analytics data.
Hmm.
And of course, developers, I have one group that's really hip on it, the other that hasn't quite adopted, another one that so it's a mix and match across the 20 some teams of people that do it.
Mm.
The interesting thing is also that there are sort of, I would say, the middle management. I'm technically middle management, but we're a very hands-on organization,
Mm.
even up to, director, VP levels. And so no one really escapes the, hey, let me show you how to do this. Here, let me share a link. So we've got people in the executive suite who also live every day looking at a Dynatrace dashboard or digging in, hey, can I send you a link? Take a look at that. And recently even expanded into our tech support teams.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's everywhere.
Well, so that connection to the business, reinforcing that connection,
Mhm.
Making IT align with the business has been a topic as long as I've been in the industry, but the latest term for that in observability circles seems to be Observability 2.0 in addition to other things.
Yeah.
Is that a conversation you follow in terms of keeping up with AI observability?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple great sources to follow, and a lot of the lead people I know in terms of observability are working in and around the CNCF, and that
Mhm.
goes even back to helping out on. I was on the advisory board for the Kepton solution,
Mhm.
and now SDLC events and things making them way into every observability tool. The CNCF is a great place, and they have some of the first people. I think Sam was doing some things. I forget Sam's last name. Sam Sumple at CNCF was doing this great article, What is Observability 2.0?
Mhm.
And for folks like you and me that have been through many incarnations from, hey, we monitor things, and then, hey, there's these log things, and
Mm.
hey, there's traces. But I still have people that go back to the 90s and they're like, you remember that tea leaf product that used to mark things going back and forth? Remember
Ah,
Mercury Topaz? Like,
wow.
you sound like an old guy with these old products that, to be honest, were really, I think, ahead of their time and maybe ahead of the data mass that they would create. So they did it, all of a sudden it became very cumbersome to adopt a tool like that.
Mhm.
And we've gotten over that hump as a with the cloud and data compression and all these kinds of things we've done. So observability 2.0 for me is the next incarnation, the next wave for the few things that we have done 3 or 4 times and it never really took.
Mm.
But they were great ideas, right?
Yeah.
Business and technology, optimize the business by optimizing the technology. Great. Put the two together. Great. Monitoring and traces and logs. Oh my. Woohoo.
Yeah.
You know? And then it's like, okay, what do we call that? And then, oh, that's where I'm observing. Okay, observability becomes our class for all of these kinds of things. 2.0, I think, really does much better embracing of the different varying applications of AI to some kind of benefit or value.
Mm.
And I can see it also, like you say, what can I do with my observability solution
Mm.
to expand the value I get out of all of this data?
Mm.
Because it's tremendously robust data. I think, is a symptom of observability, not the other way around in a way,
Huh.
because you have this great feature-rich data, and any data scientist doing building learning models is like, give me clean, great data, and
Mm.
we can do fantastic pattern or anti-pattern recognition. So to me, those are the two areas how we apply AI to all of this and how do we do it for a mutual benefit moving forward. That'll be the big thing. We can call it observability 3.0. After 2.0, it just kind of falls off. No one counts anymore.
Right. Yeah. You can only count to 2.
Right.
It's a binary, right?
Right.
So what's your outlook in terms of a year from now, 5 years, and longer term? How do you see all this developing? And it's going so fast, but where do you see things going?
I would say I think our human systems, policies,
Mm.
practices, the step by steps we do, or the elimination of the steps we do, that morphing has to happen. And I think it's happening fast, and it's in some ways happening in a inhumane way or in not a sustainable way for humans.
Mm.
We're excited about the AI. We're excited about the ability to apply a model. But if I start having a model train itself, we talk about agentic AI, we talk about other ways of a model feeding other models. So I just learned something. Can I share it?
Sure.
And making it dynamic.
Yeah.
That I don't think we're quite ready for.
Mm.
The human processes are the way we work. That's what I think is the most anxiety to have in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I think the mitigation to that is less of a soft skill coaching or understanding of an organizational issue
Mm.
and more of a what concrete things do I do, given the fact that just like every other piece of code on the planet, this stuff is fallible. We already know it's fallible. All machinery is fallible. Stuff falls apart. There's always weird subatomic particles that fly through and destroy calculations. It's entropy is unavoidable.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be an interesting space for how do we adapt the learning system we did, whether it's observability or just morphing big data,
Mm.
like big data analytics into AI and machine learning.
Mhm.
I think Splunk did a fantastic job of trying to do that with the logs view of the world. I think Snowflake or Databricks are doing some great work around how do we do that to get people out of old data warehousing world and then overlaying operational information from observability tools suddenly makes things pop.
Hmm.
And so we'll see how that plays out in the next several years. But yeah, there'll be some human adjustment. What is my job?
Right.
Not that I won't have one, but what do I do now? And remember, like how much was like 6, 7 years ago, there was the DevOps came along, and
Mm.
I'm here to replace the toner in your printer. Was their sort of weird story? Like you don't need a guy to replace the toner in your printer anymore. Well, actually, true. If you've got a huge operation, you do need someone to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that will happen as well. The person that's just watching the gauges and watching the monitoring go, even at my company, we expect those people to be executing all of the different standard operating procedures, but also exploring and inventing why something happened.
Mm-hmm.
We reward people if they go quote unquote above and beyond, but they're inventing new ways to understand what data patterns we see and what traffic patterns we see.
Mm.
So that's a new way to motivate people. So that's what I think will happen over the next 5 years is how do we keep people resilient
Mm.
in the face of all of this adaptation?
Because these are, to use a term in the observability world, socio-technical systems.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy and sharing your insights with us. And thanks very much.
Thank you, Beth. It was a really great opportunity to talk to you about this stuff in depth. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks, Mark. This has been IT Ops Query Season 3, Observability in the Age of AI. If you have any feedback on this episode or want to share questions, comments, or stories we should consider covering, please reach out to me at beth.pariseau, that's PARISEAU, at informatechtarget.com. Please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to this podcast on your platform of choice, and tune in next week for our continued conversations with industry experts about how observability is shaping AI and how AI is shaping observability.